If you clicked this video, you saw the thumbnail. You read the title, and you probably thought, no way, that can't be real. It is real. For thousands of years, some Chinese women tried to stop pregnancy with things so dangerous, so desperate, so horrifying, they sound like a punishment, not medicine. Mercury, lead. Bitter herbs, animal membranes, saffron, musk, live tadpoles. And yes, I mean actual tadpoles. Tiny, wriggling creatures from a pond, swallowed whole. Not because women were stupid, because they were trapped. Imagine being 22 years old. You already have 3 children. Your husband is a poor farmer. The harvest failed. There is not enough grain in the house. If you get pregnant again, somebody may starve, the newborn, one of your children. So what do? You go to the local healer. He gives you a tiny dose of a toxic metal. He tells you, drink this. Maybe you won't get pregnant again. Maybe you will never get pregnant again. Maybe it will poison you. But the choice in front of you is even worse. So you drink because when a woman has no safe way to control her body, she will reach for anything, even poison. Today we are talking about the hidden history of birth control in China. Not the clean version, not the museum version, the ugly version. The version with fish bladders used as condoms. The version with women swallowing live tadpoles in spring. The version with imperial concubines whose bodies were managed like state property. The version with ordinary mothers forced to choose between pregnancy, abortion, starvation, and death. And by the end of this video, you will understand something most people never think about. Birth control was never just about sex. It was about survival. Let's start with the one that sounds fake. Fish bladder condoms before latex, before modern rubber, before pharmacies. Before anybody could walk into a store and buy a box of condoms, people still understood one basic thing. If you can block sperm, you can block pregnancy. So in parts of ancient China, people used what they had. Animal membranes. Fish, maw, dried bladders, the thin air sac inside a fish that helps it float. Think about that. Somebody looked at a fish organ and thought, this might save a woman from another pregnancy. They would clean it, soak it, stretch it, dry it, then use it as a physical barrier. Was it perfect? No. It was fragile. It was expensive. It probably smelled exactly how you think it smelled. And it was not something every poor farmer's wife could casually get. But the idea was there, a barrier method, long before rubber condoms became common in the West. So when people say ancient women knew nothing about contraception, that is wrong. They knew. They experimented, they improvised. They used whatever the world gave them, even fish parts. And if that sounds disgusting, wait until you hear the tadpole method. For generations, in some rural folk traditions, people believed that if a woman swallowed live tadpoles in spring, she could avoid pregnancy for the year. 7 tadpoles. Not 6, not 8. 7, because folk medicine loves a magic number. Women would go to ponds or streams, catch those tiny moving things, and swallow them alive. No science, no reliable effect, no real contraceptive power, just fear, hunger, rumor, and desperation wrapped into one disgusting ritual. And before you laugh, ask yourself, what would you do if your choices were another pregnancy, another mouth to feed, a dangerous abortion, or a folk remedy your grandmother swore by? That is the part people miss. These methods did not survive because they worked. They survived because women had almost nothing else. And then there was mercury. This is the one that sounds like a nightmare. Mercury is a toxic metal, the kind once used in old thermometers, the kind modern medicine treats as dangerous because it can damage your brain, your kidneys, your nerves, your whole body. But in ancient and traditional medicine, mercury and mercury compounds were sometimes treated like powerful drugs, powerful enough to heal, powerful enough to transform the body, powerful enough, people believed, to stop pregnancy. And that is where the horror begins. Because mercury can poison the body. It can disrupt organs, it can cause tremors, madness, kidney damage, infertility, miscarriage, and death. So yes, in the most brutal sense, it could work, but only the way a house fire works. If your goal is to get rid of one room, it destroys everything. This was not safe birth control. This was biological violence. Some women used toxic substances because they believed the risk was worth it. Prostitutes who could not afford pregnancy. Servants whose bodies were not really their own. Poor wives already crushed under too many children. Women abandoned by husbands. Women who knew childbirth itself might kill them. And yes, some of them paid for that choice with their lives. Not because they were careless, because the world gave them no gentle option. Now let's leave the village. Let's go inside the palace. Because in the imperial court, birth control was not just medicine, it was power. If you have ever watched a Chinese palace drama, you already know the basic rule. The harem was a battlefield. The emperor had many women, but only a few could rise. And the fastest way to rise was to give birth to his son. A son could change everything. A son could make a woman untouchable. A son could turn a concubine into a political force. But here is the part the dramas often hide. The emperor did not want every woman to have his child, because a royal child was not just a baby. It was a future prince, a political weapon, a threat, a claim to the throne. So the palace built systems around the emperor's sex life, records, rituals, eunuchs, tablets with women's names, officials tracking who was chosen, when, and why. In later king court accounts, eunuchs presented the emperor with name tablets. He selected one. That woman was prepared, checked, wrapped, and brought to him. Her body was not treated like her own body. It was treated like a guarded entrance into the royal bloodline. Afterward, everything depended on one question: keep it or not. In Chinese, the phrase is often remembered as lu bu lu, keep or not keep. If the emperor wanted the possibility of a child, the date could be recorded. The time could be written down. If pregnancy happened later, the palace had proof. This child belongs to the emperor. But if he did not want a child, then the woman's body became a problem to solve. There are accounts of eunuchs pressing points on the lower back and hips, believing they could force semen out. Was that reliable medicine? No, it was control disguised as medicine. There were also herbs and substances believed to prevent conception or trigger bleeding. Saffron was one of the most famous. Large amounts of saffron were believed to move blood, disrupt pregnancy, or cause miscarriage. But believed is the key word. This was not a clean medical procedure. This was dangerous trial and error. A woman's body was the laboratory, and if the palace wanted no pregnancy, the woman had very little say. That is what makes the harem so dark. People look at the silk, the jewelry, the painted screens, the beautiful actresses in palace dramas, and they forget the truth. A concubine could be surrounded by luxury and still have no control over the most intimate part of her life. Then there is the legend of musk. Musk was precious, strong-smelling, animal-derived, expensive, associated with sexuality, beauty, and medicine. Stories claimed that powerful women used musk to avoid pregnancy. The most famous names tied to this legend are Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hede, two sisters from the Han Dynasty, remembered as dangerously beautiful women who captured an emperor's obsession. According to later stories, they avoided pregnancy because pregnancy could change the body. And in the palace, beauty was not vanity. Beauty was survival. If the emperor lost interest, your power disappeared. If another woman gave birth to a son, your position could collapse overnight. So the legend says they chose beauty over motherhood, power over children. Whether every detail is true or mixed with palace gossip, the fear behind the story is real. In a world where a woman's value depended on male desire, even pregnancy could become a threat. Now stop thinking about emperors, because emperors and concubines were almost nothing, a tiny dot, fraction of the population. What about the ordinary women? The women with rough hands, the women in fields, the women washing clothes until their fingers cracked, the women carrying water, the women sewing by candlelight, the women giving birth on wooden beds with no doctor, no sterile room, no antibiotics, and no guarantee they would see sunrise. What did they do? The answer is heartbreaking. Most of them had almost no real options. In traditional society, a woman was expected to obey her father, then her husband, then her son. Her body was tied to family duty. Her value was tied to childbirth. And not just any child. A son, if she could not have children, she could be abandoned. If she had only daughters, she could be blamed. If she had too many children, she could still be blamed when the family starved. That was the trap. Have children or you fail. Have too many children and everyone suffers. And if another pregnancy came at the wrong time, some women turned to abortion. But abortion before modern medicine could be terrifying. No antibiotics, no sterile instruments, no safe dosage, no emergency surgery, no blood transfusion. A failed abortion could mean infection, bleeding, fever, sepsis, death. So when people talk about traditional values, I want them to remember the full tradition. Not just weddings and family names, also blood, also fear, also women dying because the safest choice did not exist yet. And if abortion was impossible, there was one even darker outcome: infanticide. This is the part people do not want to say out loud. For centuries, female infanticide was documented in parts of China. Not because mothers did not love their daughters. Do not make that lazy mistake. It happened because poverty, patriarchy, inheritance, labor, and family pressure created a machine that crushed girls before they could grow up. Sons worked the fields, sons carried the family name, sons performed ancestor rites, sons stayed, daughters were raised only to marry into another household. That was the logic. Cold, economic, brutal. In some regions and some periods, scholars have argued that the number of missing girls was horrifyingly high. The exact numbers are debated, but the pattern is not. Baby girls disappeared. Newborn girls were killed. Families made choices no family should ever face. And once you understand that, birth control stops sounding like a private lifestyle issue. It becomes something much bigger. Because when women cannot safely control pregnancy, the whole society pays in blood. Women drink poison. Women risk illegal abortions. Women are forced into childbirth that may kill them. Children are born into starvation. Girls disappear. That is not ancient weirdness. That is the cost of reproductive desperation. And yes, before somebody types it, this did not happen only in China. Of course it did not. Ancient Egyptians used mixtures involving crocodile dung and honey. Ancient Greeks and Romans experimented with plants, pessaries, and barriers. Medieval Europeans wore charms and swallowed things that did absolutely nothing. Every civilization has its own museum of reproductive panic. But China had something few places had at the same scale: a massive population under enormous pressure. By the early 19th century, China's population was approaching hundreds of millions. Most people were rural, many were poor, land was limited, harvests failed, disease was common. A new baby was not just a blessing. A new baby was also a mouth, a debt, a risk. For a rich family, another son might mean more status. For a poor woman, another pregnancy could mean death. And this did not magically end because time moved forward. Modern birth control changed the world because it changed the math. China began serious work on oral contraceptives in the early 1960s. By the end of that decade, large-scale production was underway. In the 1970s, family planning expanded nationwide. And I know what some of you are thinking. What about the one-child policy? Yes, it is controversial. Yes, it caused harm. Yes, it deserves its own video. I am not here to defend every policy the state ever made. I am saying something more basic. Before safe, modern contraception, women were not more natural. They were more trapped. They got pregnant until their bodies gave out. They gave birth until they survived or did not. And when modern public health improved, the difference was massive. In 1949, China's maternal mortality rate was around 1,500 deaths per 100,000 births. By recent decades, it had fallen to under 20 per 100,000. That is not because of one magic pill. It was hospitals, antibiotics, trained birth attendants, vaccination, emergency care, education, and yes, the ability to prevent pregnancies that women could not safely carry. That is what reproductive health really means. Not slogans, not ideology, survival. Now let's bring this back to you, because it is easy to watch history like it belongs behind glass. Mercury, tadpoles, fish bladders, imperial eunuchs, concubines wrapped in blankets, starving mothers, dead daughters. It all sounds far away, but it is not as far away as you think. The technology changed, the politics changed, the language changed, but the question is still the same. Who gets to decide what happens inside a woman's body? The woman? Her husband? Her family? A doctor? A priest? A judge? A politician? A government? In 2026, people are still fighting over that question. In the United States, abortion is banned in a number of states, and several more have very early limits. Some laws have exceptions on paper: life of the mother, medical emergency, rape, incest. But paper exceptions can be useless when doctors are afraid, hospitals are confused, and women are forced to wait until danger becomes undeniable. That is not freedom. That is a legal trap. Some women have been investigated after pregnancy losses. Some doctors have warned that delays in emergency pregnancy care can cost lives. Ectopic pregnancy treatment should never be blocked. Miscarriage treatment should never be delayed by fear of prosecution. And yet, this is the world people are arguing about right now. And contraception is part of the same fight. Birth control access is not just about whether a pill exists. It is about whether insurance covers it, whether a pharmacy stocks it, whether a pharmacist can refuse it, whether a teenager can get it, whether rural women can reach a clinic, whether politicians decide that your private medical choice is now public business. So when someone says, just go back to traditional values, I want you to ask, which tradition? The tradition where women swallowed poison? The tradition where girls were killed at birth? The tradition where childbirth was a leading cause of death? The tradition where a woman's body belonged to her family, her husband, or the state? Because history is very clear about one thing. When safe birth control disappears, pregnancy does not disappear. Sex does not disappear. Desperation does not disappear. Only safety disappears. Women do not stop trying to control their lives. They just lose the safe ways to do it. They go underground, they use rumors, they use herbs, they use chemicals, they use dangerous procedures, they use whatever someone whispers will work, and some of them die. That is the lesson. That is the part history keeps screaming at us. The fish bladder is not the story. The tadpoles are not the story. The Mercury is not even the story. The story is what people will do when society gives women no safe choice. So yes, be shocked, be disgusted, be angry, but do not look down on those women. They were not backward. They were not foolish. They were surviving inside systems built without mercy. And honestly, a lot of people today are still asking women to do the same thing, just with cleaner language. Now, I want to know what hit you the hardest. The fish bladder condoms, the live tadpoles, the Mercury, the palace system, or the fact that so many ordinary women had to choose between pregnancy, poverty, and death. And tell me this, are we really more civilized now? Or do we just have better branding? Leave your answer in the comments. I will be reading the controversial ones, especially the ones that disagree with me. If this video taught you something, hit like, share it with someone who thinks birth control is a small issue, and subscribe, because next time we are going even deeper into the medical practices people once believed were normal. Some of them were disgusting, some were deadly, and some will make you wonder how humanity survived at all. Stay safe, stay informed, and never take control over your own body for granted.